How's it going, everybody? Ryan here today, the host of the Expansion Bros podcast. I am without Abby. He's busy this week. So you're just going to be hearing from me and my thoughts, but don't worry, we're going to get Abby back on the podcast as soon as possible. If you guys are new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you are going to go on to enjoy this podcast, go ahead and leave a like on the video. Now, one of the big things we left off with after our last podcast was free agency, and some of the big fish hadn't signed. Well, they've officially signed, and we really got to talk about this, guys. I don't think anybody saw this first one coming. The first major domino to fall was Taylor Hall to Buffalo. You know what? I'm a Sabres fan. I'm going to be 100% honest. I did not see this coming, but you know what? It just kind of makes sense. There's an argument for it, basically. Why he didn't choose to go to Colorado, it's probably the money. He mentions he's close to his fiance and to his parents, who are, I think, up in Kingston, Ontario, and they just bought a place in Toronto. So they're close to home, right? It's just a few hours, 2 hours north up the QEW, and you're there if you're driving from Buffalo to Toronto. So you can get it kind of like distance-wise, but if I were Taylor Hall, I might have looked at Colorado a little harder, even if they were going to pay me less. Because you get a chance to play on a really stacked roster with a chance that you're probably going to be in the Cup Finals this year if things go well. If they go right, if they stay healthy, I'm pretty sure Colorado should be in the Cup Finals. I don't know. They got to get past Vegas, who we're going to talk about here in a second. But Taylor Hall to Buffalo. Enough of what could be. Let's talk about what is. Taylor Hall joins the Buffalo Sabres on a 1-year, $8 million bet on yourself kind of deal. And it just, I keep saying it makes sense. There's an argument for it, and here's that argument. Taylor Hall has been bouncing around a lot, and you're not really sure what Taylor Hall you're getting. You're probably going to get 80, 90-point Taylor Hall if we're talking about a 82-game pace here, but you're never really too sure. There's a couple seasons where he has disappointed recently, and bouncing from New Jersey to Arizona where, you know, neither team did he make a real big impact on in recent memory. I know he willed the Devils into the playoffs when he won the MVP, but that's a few years removed now. And people are just kind of wary, especially in this pandemic revenues down kind of time, of giving out a huge contract extension to somebody that maybe they're not super certain on is going to push their team over the edge. And Buffalo is a kind of team that needs that spark. They've got a pretty disgruntled superstar. I'm gonna call him disgruntled because I don't know how you can't be, in Jack Eichel. And they need to make him happy. They need to make sure that the team is buzzing, and that Jack is the kind of guy that's going to get him to the play. I mean, he's the future of the franchise. Even if Taylor Hall is one and done, Jack's the future. He's here for a while, and you want to keep him here. You don't want to keep those trade rumors. So you can see the reasons from Buffalo, but for Taylor Hall, you get to play with the best centerman you've ever played with. And yes, I know about the McDavid arguments. He played mostly with Draisaitl, and that was before Draisaitl really got to explode there in Edmonton. And he played for 75 minutes at even strength with rookie Connor McDavid. And in those 75 minutes, they dominated opponents. I mean, like 60% expected goals for. Their Corsi for was up above the 55% range. I mean, they just totally drove play and just hemmed teams in and just generated chance after chance. And it was just amazing. Now, rookie Connor McDavid is not current Jack Eichel. And, rookie Connor McDavid is not current Connor McDavid. So it only makes sense that Taylor Hall is going to be able to produce that same kind of results with Jack Eichel. And being able to put up a ton of points means he's going to get paid, whether Buffalo moves the cap space around to pay him next season and he stays here because things go well, or he goes to free agency again and signs like a 5-year deal worth $9 million, $9.5 million a season somewhere else. Maybe Boston keeps their pulse going. But he's also on record saying Ralph Kruger is the best coach he's ever played for. It's his favorite coach. He respects him a ton, and they have the mutual respect there. I don't know if anybody's ever listened to that Sabres Embedded. It's just recently out, but the call between Taylor Hall and Ralph Kruger, the way they talk to each other, they're like, just the respect is there. They are just, in sync. And I think that's a big reason Taylor Hall decided if he's going to take a 1-year deal to come to Buffalo. There's not a ton of pressure here either. That's another thing against the Colorado argument. If you're going to Colorado, there's a ton of pressure. You may not get to play with McKinnon, and the pressure's on there for you to bring a cup there with McKinnon and Rantanen and all those guys, but the pressure's on you there. In Buffalo, they're just asking you to make the playoffs. Get paid $8 million. make the playoffs, and put up 100 points on Jack Eichel's left wing. Doesn't seem like there's a lose in there for Taylor Hall unless it all flames out and he is just really poor for the first half of the season. Then we get to the trade deadline. He's got that no movement clause. He gets to choose where he goes, but if nobody's really going to buy him, I mean, again, there's another reason. You got $4 million basically, because I assume Buffalo would retain half the cap to go ahead and move him and make it more enticing. He gets to choose where he goes. Buffalo gets assets back, and it's really not a lose in that situation except for the fans of Buffalo and Jack Eichel. So this one just makes sense to me. Being a Sabres fan, I am super stoked for this, but it makes sense. Everyone was super shocked. I know he said he wants to win, but look at the teams he's been on. If he makes the playoffs, this will be an improvement for a lot of the teams he's been on recently. And then we move on next. Speaking of teams in the playoffs, we've got the next big domino to fall, which is Alex Petrangelo to the Vegas Golden Knights. He signs at 7 years at 8.8, and oh my God, does Vegas all of a sudden look really dangerous. I mean, if you could point to any weakness on the Vegas Golden Knights, it would probably be that they're lacking a top-end defenseman. I love Shea Theodore. I love Shea Theodore in the way he plays, right? I think he's a fantastic defender in the NHL. But Petrangelo is just better. And you add a guy like Petrangelo and keep a guy like Shea Theodore, you just made your defensive core so stupid solid. It's a really, really great defensive core. And you don't really lose too much on the front end. I mean, you do get rid of Stastny to Winnipeg. But overall, I think subtracting Stastny and adding Petrangelo is definitely worth it. Now, they do have to move a little bit of cap. They're about $1 million or so over the cap right now. So they're going to have to move some things around. They already started with a trade of Nate Schmidt to Vancouver for a third in 2022. Not even this upcoming draft, but, next draft. That's a steal for Vancouver. It makes sense for Vegas. And credit to Jim Benning for jumping on that when he did. A 2022 second, or third, 2022 third for Nate Schmidt. Nate Schmidt's a quality defender in the NHL. They believe they lost Tanev. They lost him on the back end, and their defense was the weakest part of their roster. But then they go out and acquire Nate Schmidt for pretty much what's a slam dunk deal in their return. I think it's fantastic for Vancouver. Vancouver fans have a lot to be excited about. Young core, promising team. Braden Holtby comes in. Nate Schmidt comes in. The team gets to grow, gel another year. Man, it's going to be fun there in Vancouver, but also Vegas. Man, the West is good. The Pacific. The Pacific alone is going to be really, really good. And I think, like I said, Petrangelo might be that needle mover. And we'll be doing Stanley Cup predictions here in not too long. I know way too early Stanley Cup predictions and Cup and point and, playoff predictions. Me, Abby, and maybe some of the other moderators will join the podcast for that one. But they might have moved the needle there, Vegas. For me to say, I think they might be the class of the West. Can I say that? Over Colorado? I don't know. That's just my take. That's just my take. I think that Vegas has the goaltending edge over Colorado. And I just think the teams are both just stacked. I just got to give it that goaltending edge to Vegas. I mean, keeping Fleury is not great for their cap hit, but it's great for their goaltending tandem. And Robin Lehner on a cheap deal. I mean, the deal is great and the player is great too. So Vegas might have moved that needle for me. Next up, you got Eric Gustafson to Philadelphia, which I think is a great signing. 1 year at $3 million. Philly's a really good team. Disappointing in the bubble this year, losing out to Montreal in the first true round of the playoffs. I think that was just a Carey Price masterclass. It was one of those things. I don't know. I think Philly's a really solid team, and I think they are poised to go a little bit deeper this year. I mean, it's hard not to pick them to go further than round one, but I definitely think they're a team on the rise. There's no more excuses, though, in Philly. You've got your goaltender. You've got a team. You signed Gustafson, who's a quality defenseman. Your defensive core looks really solid. Your forwards are good. You've got some young players. Nolan Patrick just extended. Joel Farabee's there. A lot to be excited about in Philly, but a lot of questions if they don't end up making some noise this year. I'm not going to talk too long on Philly because just Gustafson pushes the needle a little bit, but like I said, the two were Taylor Hall and Petrangelo. Those pushed the needle a lot on those teams. Buffalo probably makes the playoffs now. Vegas is more likely than not the Western Conference favorite in my book, simply because they edge in goaltending now with that addition of Petrangelo, evens out pretty much everything else for me compared to Colorado. Those are my two teams in the West. Back east, though, we're going to go Tyler Toffoli to Montreal on 4 years at 4.25. Now, this is an interesting one. Montreal is not playing it safe with the money they're handing out. They are handing out term, and they're handing out dollars. And that could, signal some fire under Bergevin. The gyms are closed, so apparently he's just been on his phone. He's been doing curls with his cell phone, picking up, calls, making trades, and signing contracts. But again, this is a really good signing for Montreal. I think he's just a perfect guy for their middle six, second line. Another guy that they got back was Brendan Gallagher on his 6-year extension. Like I'm saying, guys, what was it, 7 years for Josh Anderson? So just in this offseason, they've extended Toffoli for 4 years, or I should say not extended, but signed Toffoli for 4 years, extended Gallagher for another 6, and then extended Josh Anderson, who they traded Domi for 7 years. He is going all in, and this team is locked in. If any of these guys look poor, Toffoli's probably the most movable at 4 years at 4.25, which, I keep looking at that number. It's a solid number for Toffoli, and I think it's a really great signing for them. They're locking in. Montreal is all in. The core is there. The players are there. Maybe they want to look a little bit at defense. I think Petrie just got a contract extension. They just got rid of Carl Alsner too. So maybe look to add somebody there. I don't know how much cap space, if they have the cap space to be able to do that. I will pull that up here in just a minute. But I think Montreal, they've got $300,000 in cap space. So they're pretty much done. Hudon's their only RFA. They have 12 forwards signed. They have 7 defensemen signed. And they've got a goaltending tandem of Carey Price and Jake Allen. That's $14.85 million in just 2 goaltenders. That's a lot. That's mostly Carey Price, let's be honest. But they went all in and gave Jake Allen, well, I guess they didn't give him a ton of money. They extended him for $2.875, which is a really more in line with what he deserves. So they're biting the bullet for year one. And they finally have themselves a backup goaltender of quality. I think Jake Allen, we can say safely that he's a quality backup goaltender. He might be a starter if you needed him to on a team like, what Detroit did last year. They didn't really have a good starter. He probably would have started there and been better than the 2 guys they had in Detroit. But still, he's better served in that backup role, and that's where he is now. But looking at their roster, it's a really good roster. Tyler Toffoli, Brendan Gallagher is back. It looks solid to me. You just got to hope that their centers play the way that you'd hope they would. Kotkaniemi, Suzuki's up now. Philippe Deneau, those guys. Those are the guys you want to get going. Domi didn't work out, and he's gone. And Josh Anderson's now their, I guess, second highest paid forward, tied with Jonathan Drouin. It's a young core in their prime. I guess I shouldn't say young, but there are some young pieces. But it's a core in their prime with a couple defensemen, maybe past their prime in Weber and Petrie, but a bunch of guys that this is what they are in the NHL. We know what they are. They're quality. They've been there. They've done that. Now they just got to win. Can you get on the ice and can you win? Because on paper, I really like this team. I really like the Montreal Canadiens. There's a reason why they beat Philly last year, and it's, Carey Price mostly, but, it's not like Carey Price and 22 other scrubs. They've got talent on this roster. And the acquisition of Anderson and Toffoli, those are 2 more forwards that's really going to help them out. I think Montreal is poised to make some noise in that Atlantic division. Boston maybe is dropping off a little bit. We'll see what Toronto does. They're signing some depth guys. They got some guys in arbitration. Who knows what they're going to have to move in and out, but Toronto's an interesting one. Is Tampa Bay going to have a bit of a Stanley Cup hangover? Is Florida going to pick themselves up? Did Buffalo really move the needle that much? Ottawa, is it still a year or 2 before Ottawa's really contending? Montreal is making themselves known in this Atlantic division, guys. And then finally, speaking of Toronto, Jumbo Joe goes to Toronto 1 year at league minimum, which I find really interesting. Joe Thornton said he wants to win. He wants to go to a place with the where he has a chance at winning the Stanley Cup. And you can't be wrong. Toronto is one of those places. Maybe a guy that's been there, that's seen it all, one of the fiercest competitors, but also is willing to put his arm around some of the younger guys like Joe Thornton. Great locker room guy, super happy, super fun, bubbling around, smiling, having fun, joking. But then game day comes and it's straight-faced Joe Thornton. There's nothing fun about it. We're going out to win a hockey game. We're not going out to have fun. We're going out to win. And maybe that's the kick in the pants some of the younger Leafs need. I mean, I don't think any of the younger Leafs really are feeling like, oh, I can just slack off or goof around. But I think that leadership that Joe Thornton can provide, that maybe a Tavares doesn't provide. Austin Matthews is still pretty young. Mitch Marner's probably not that guy that's going to get the whole locker room's attention and get them to focus up and ready up for the game. Having a guy like Joe Thornton just kind of makes sense. In 1 year at $700,000, I mean, you can't beat Joe Thornton for league minimum. I don't know how much he has left in the tank, but he's certainly got enough to have a roster spot in the NHL, to be starting somewhere, lines 1 through 4 in the NHL. He's definitely got that much left. 1 year, $700,000. Not really a lot of downside there for Toronto. There have been some trades as well recently in free agency. I think everything's cooled off simply because we're waiting for the arbitration dates. We'll get into that a little bit later. But as far as trades, I mentioned the Nate Schmidt to Vancouver for a 2022 third. I think A+. Both sides A+. You basically traded Nate. You traded Nate Schmidt for Petrangelo and a third. That's what you did. And whoever else they give up, it's not going to move that needle that much. It's a win-win for both sides. Rarely do you see this kind of thing happen in the NHL where neither side is going to come out of this unhappy with moving whatever. Acquiring Nate Schmidt is a no-brainer for Vancouver, and I mean for a third. And Vegas get the third in Petrangelo. You can't really argue with that. Next up, we have another defender moving. We have Devin Hayes to Colorado for the next 2 years' worth of second-rounders. That's a great pickup for Colorado, depending on what they re-sign him to. I believe he's an RFA, and he might have filed for arbitration. Pulling that up quickly here. Devin Hayes, he's scheduled to go to arbitration on Halloween, October 31st. And they've got cap space. The Colorado Avalanche have cap space. It's a no-brainer move. It just, again, strengthens that team. He would be their 6th defenseman signed. They've got 12 forwards signed. They've got their goaltending. I mean, their goaltending is only being paid $5.3 million. Very nicely done there. Colorado. But right now, second-round picks, not worthwhile to Colorado. Defensemen who are in their prime at 26 years old, who are very, very good. He's a good puck-moving defenseman, Devin Hayes. I really like him. He's, very, very slept on because I think he plays in the Islanders, who don't get talked about individually. They get talked about as a team, but not individually. I think he's very good. I think this is a slam dunk pickup for the Avalanche. The Islanders couldn't really afford to re-sign him. They still got to get Barzal back anyway. I mean, Barzal is the guy I'm talking about if you're looking at re-signing somebody. They have $8.9 million, so maybe Barzal takes a bridge deal. I mean, I don't really know what they do there, but they weren't going to be able to pay him. They got to pay Pulock too. So more moves are probably coming from the Islanders, but we'll have to wait and see what they do in arbitration. But again, Colorado, very solid pickup there. And, just more picks, kind of restocking the cupboard for the Islanders after they went out at that deadline and got guys like Pajot, giving up some picks for that. Finally, another trade from the Colorado Avalanche is Brandon Saad to Colorado in exchange for Nikita Zadorov. If I'm Chicago, I don't understand what you're doing. See, they let Gustafson go, they bring in Zadorov, and they get rid of Saad. Something about that, I don't know what kind of team he's trying to put together there in Chicago, and I totally get why guys like Kane, Keith, and Taze are all just have no idea what's going on. They don't want to play for a rebuilder. They're probably not too happy with the direction of the team. Their goaltending tandem is not exactly what you want to see if you think you can have one more cup run. I'm sorry, but Delia and Subban are not cup-winning goaltenders. I don't care who you've got in front of them. They're not cup-winning goaltenders. And moving Saad for Zadorov, I don't know if it addresses an issue or a need. I think it's another loss. This is probably the third time he's traded Saad, and the third time he's lost the Saad trade. I mean, he's traded Saad, traded for Saad, and then traded him again. Colorado, it just makes sense. They didn't get Taylor Hall. They didn't sign Toffoli. They didn't sign Dadonov. By the way, I meant to mention the Dadonov signing for Ottawa. Really quality signing. That's a team that, by the time Stützle's up and ready to go, they've got, Colin White. Shabbat's obviously good. Kachuk's already good. They've got Matt Murray. It's a team on the rise. They have a few more things that they need to do. Probably fill out the middle six. Well, I guess should say fill out the bottom six. Their second line is there. It's young, but it's there. Their defensive core, pretty close. Maybe one or two more guys. Maybe again at middle pairing. Fill out the rest of the team. They've got a top end now, and they've got a top end future. But it's the rest of the team now. They've got Sanderson coming up, so in a year, he'll probably be good to go. Maybe that's where they find it. But anyway, back to Colorado. Again, they just keep loading up. The arsenal is just stacked for Colorado, which is, I mean, they're the hot pick for the Cup. They probably should have gotten past Dallas if Grubauer was healthy, but he wasn't. And yeah, if he can stay healthy, it gives them a way better chance, obviously. But that's why I'm saying a team like Vegas might be my number one pick in the West, followed by Vancouver. Vancouver, not Vancouver. Ooh, that would be a hot take right there. No, we're talking Vegas and Colorado are my two. And you know what? Depending on what happens over the next 2 months before the puck drops for the start of the season, I could go back and forth on those teams. But right now I've got Vegas 1, Colorado 2 for who I think is going to represent the West in the Stanley Cup. But finally, we still have some leftover players that have not signed yet as of this recording, October 20th. Mike Hoffman hasn't signed, Mikael Granlund, and Alex Galchenyuk, three of the more notable names. Hoffman, you know, there's two teams now where he's been on that they've just willingly let him go for nothing, and I wonder if there is more to that locker room issue than, you know, we originally thought there in Ottawa, but he still does well. He's not nearly as, I wouldn't say he's as good as Toffoli, in my opinion, or Dadonov. He's probably right up in there with those guys, but if I had to pick, I think I would take the other two over him because I think Hoffman is going to command a bigger dollar than Toffoli, but I would say Dadonov is the better player over Hoffman, so it's an interesting bag there. But Hoffman's got to go somewhere. I don't think he's going to sit on free agency for much longer. We've got probably 2 weeks left of arbitration. So after that, we should see a lot more things start to rev up. Early November is when you'll see these guys go. Same thing with Mikael Granlund. One of those guys that teams just don't exactly know what they're getting. He had a good couple seasons a few seasons ago. These more recent seasons have not been nearly as good for Mikael Granlund. So maybe go somewhere where he's put up in a good position to succeed. Maybe Ottawa, where he's going to get ice time. He's going to put up points with, you know, good wingers, or maybe he switches back to right wing. And he takes that 1-year deal where he bets on himself, and same thing, similar to Taylor Hall, although he's not going to get paid nearly as much. Similar bet on yourself. Kind of a Galchenyuk thing, too. There was not a lot of buyers for Galchenyuk, and you notice that a team that was very, you know, centered, needy in the Wild could go for him. I don't know how much they're going to want. I mean, didn't exactly work out when he was there last time. Let's go ahead and take a quick look. Yeah, he played for the Wild 14 games, 7 points. I mean, that's not bad. 3 goals, 4 assists, 2+2. I mean, 50.5 points per game is not bad. It did not work out in Pittsburgh. It didn't work out in Arizona. It was okay in Montreal. He's that 50-point player, but you just got to get him back to that kind of play. And Minnesota's got really an interesting center core situation. So I'm not sure why they wouldn't bring him back, but he's an unrestricted free agent right now. 26 years old. Definitely, I think, still an NHL quality player, but we'll see where he ends up landing. Again, 1-year deal for him. If there's any of these 3 guys that I would say signs a multi-year deal, it's probably Hoffman in that Dadonov 3-year kind of thing. But Granlund and Galchenyuk probably need 1 or 2-year deals to just really find themselves and establish themselves yet again, and especially in an uncertain market like we have today with the pandemic. Finally, we have arbitration. I've mentioned it a couple times before this segment, but 23 players have filed for arbitration in the NHL. 5 have reached a settlement. Those 5 players being Mangiapane, D'Angelo, Grzelcyk, and Georgiev. Those are the 5 that have reached an agreement before getting settled by the arbiter. Tomorrow, Ilya Mikheyev is set to have his salary arbitration hearing. The 22nd, they have Connor Brown, Tyler Bertuzzi on the 25th, Linus Ullmark on the 26th, Sam Reinhart on the 27th of October. 28th of October sees Jake Virtanen. October 30th is Josh Hosang. Devin Hayes, as I mentioned, is on October 31st. By the way, Nicholas Paul also reached a settlement before arbitration. His was scheduled for November 1st. Gustav Forsling was November 2nd. November 4th is Victor Olofsson and Warren Foegele. November 5th is Ryan Strome. That one should be very interesting. November 6th is Brendan Lemieux and Ryan Pulock. So you should expect to see the Islanders be active before that, I'd assume, if they have any intention of keeping Pulock. November 7th is Christian Jaros, and November 8th is Chris Tierney, Mackenzie Weegar, and Hayden Fleury. Interesting names on this list. Some of the ones I'm looking out for are Mikheyev, simply because I don't know what the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to do about that whole cap space situation. I mean, they're already over, I believe. And is he that valuable? They have about $1.5 million in cap space. Mikheyev, Dermott, they don't have a ton of cap space, is all I'm saying. So we'll see what they end up doing. Not sure if they can dip into that LTIR still. I don't know if they have anybody on LTIR. That Phil Kessel retained salary is starting to look worse and worse. They have Phil Kessel on their books for $1.2 million for another 2 seasons. I mean, that's the money that they probably could be paying Mikheyev. He'd probably take up all of it and then some. But still, then you have a less hard job for Kyle Dubas. Tyler Bertuzzi's another interesting one. Linus Ullmark and Sam Reinhart. I'm more interested to see what Sam Reinhart gets. I think that Brendan Gallagher contract, I'd like to see the Sabres sign Reinhart to a 6x6.5. If we could get that for Sam, I'd be very happy. 6x6. I wonder what they're going to go in on. I know Mikheyev, the team wants a 2-year deal, I think at $1 million, and Mikheyev wanted a 1-year deal at $2 million, something like that. I think he said 2.7 actually. Jake Virtanen on the 28th is interesting. Josh Hosang, I don't know if he's going to get much. Devin Hayes, I think Colorado might strike a deal with him before that comes to fruition. Victor Olofsson, probably will get the Dominic Kubalik treatment with that 2 years, $3.5 million, right in that range. Ryan Strome's very interesting, and then Ryan Pulock is another one that I'm interested in, simply because I want to see what the Islanders are going to have to do or what they're going to want to do. But like I said, guys, we are going to be previewing the Stanley Cup Finals. Our way too early predictions are coming here in the next week, so hit that subscribe button. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one.